Well, first of all, thank you so much. Really excited to be here to walk everyone through what we believe is a really great way in looking at, you different benefit partners, different broker partners, and trying to streamline that process as much as possible. But before we do so, just a quick introduction as to who we are, right? Who's presenting this content to you today? Again, my name is Ed Ligonde. I am the partner and market director with Nava Benefits. Been in this business for, gosh, it's been about 15 years or so, and still definitely learning something new every single day. Really focused on helping employers modernize the benefit approach and really bring the good connection between benefits and employee experience and return on engagement as well. But I'd love to introduce my teammate, an awesome teammate, Colleen Locke. Colleen, do you want to say hi really quick?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Locke. I'm the Director of Benefit Solutions here at Nava Benefits. In my role, I partner with prospective clients to really understand their pain points as it relates to their benefit programs and identify solutions that can help them to meet their goals. So RFPs are pretty near and dear to my heart, as this is a great opportunity for employers to really evaluate their own pain points and how their broker is or isn't partnering with them to level up their benefits.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Colleen. As we dive into this today, before we even dive into the how to make the RFP process less daunting and something that maybe is a little bit more enjoyable, we figured we'd take a quick second to talk about the state of the union of the employee benefit space, right? So, as we've looked at the great resignation as we've come out of COVID and a remote working atmosphere for many different employers in many different industries, employees are leaving companies at a record pace, right? We've all gone through some of these different iconic time frames as well. And what we're also seeing is that employees are taking much more of a serious approach to who they're working for. Are they bought into the mission? And what types of benefits are really offered? Right. So it's really taking a second look to how benefits are monitored and managed and implemented from an employer perspective. And secondly, mid-market employers saw the largest health cost increases in a decade. Gosh, the increases we were seeing over the last year or two were substantial, significant double-digit increases. And what was difficult during that time was that there was very little transparency into to the why in some of those particular scenarios, in some of those. And so that has caused many employers to take a seat back, to take a second and say, hey, what kind of levers can we pull to really take advantage of lowering the cost curve and making our benefits affordable, sustainable, and attractive for members across the board? And then, of course, what we believe is a really good thing in our space is that there's an explosion of innovation happening in the benefits industry when it comes to lifestyle benefits or mental health benefits, point solutions, telemedicine, so on and so forth. I mean, you name it. There's a lot of great vendors that are joining the space and really helping redefine even what the term employee benefits means, year over year as well. And again, as we talk about this, when the one undertone we want to discuss is the fact that employees' needs have changed dramatically over the last several years, again, not only as a product of COVID, but just the fact that we have different generations coming in and out of the workforce and different needs and different healthcare journeys that people are going through, right? And in addition to that, we're also giving employees much more of a platform to provide feedback as well. And so we have much more transparency into the needs that employees may have, and also the different point solutions we can put in place to help bring the best versions of those employees out day in and day out as well. Now, if you are an employer that has been, hey, I really want to focus on leveling up our benefit experience. I really want to level up, our employee experience as well. Of course, they're your number one asset, your employees. This may be the year to do so, right? This might be the year to take a second set of eyes, take a look at your partnerships and make sure, are they leveling up your experience across the board? So as we take a look at your benefits brokerage, we wanted to take a quick second to explain, what does a broker even do, right? For the longest time, a broker sits as the intermediary between you and your employees, you as the employer, the employees and their families, and of course, all the various insurance products that are out there, medical, the dental, the visions, life and disabilities of the world, and of course, helping procure those particular plans. So you as the employer can say, hey, I'd like to buy a health plan. You reach out to a broker, they quote this for you, and they put those plans in place, and then you see them again next year to talk about renewals. But the benefit industry has significantly changed over the last decade and especially blown apart over the last 5 to 7 years. And so it's really brought forth the birth of a modern benefits broker, or basically a partner who is willing to help plug into your culture, plug into your employee experience, and really help level up those experiences from the moment that someone starts with your company, from the moment that they part ways for whatever reason as well. So they still sit as the intermediary between you and the carriers, but also are a great partner in helping educate, helping bring great point solutions, as you see here on the screen, whether it's from a family planning perspective, mental health perspective, diabetes care, things of that nature. And what we're talking about when we say lifestyle benefits are non-insurance benefits, right? Again, the term employee benefits for so long has equaled insurance. But as we've seen the expansion of that term, the employee benefits term is now meaning the benefit of being an employee. And again, not to make it a game about semantics, but what we're finding is that the modern benefits broker is taking that approach to help you as the employer challenge how you deliver your benefits and bring in much more of a comprehensive view on how you put those together for your employees. But when you are taking a look at how reach out to different brokers and assess brokers, gosh, the process is quite cumbersome, right? It can be a lot of work, it can be quite daunting, and you might feel just like this person on the screen. And what we're hoping to do today is reduce some of that burden for you and streamline the process throughout the way. But the RFP is just one way, not the only way, but it is the one way that can be an effective way to finding the right partner throughout the year. And the way why an RFP can work is because it can be an effective process for decision makers to get the best results, right? You're asking tons of questions, getting a lot of valuable feedback from some potential providers, and you're hoping to get a provider that really understands your culture and the benefits that you really want to bring in forth from a goals perspective. And then it's also your opportunity to understand just the different capabilities that are out there. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and you really need to kind of tap the market and see what else is out there so you can have a eyes wide open approach to benefit delivery. And then, of course, the opportunity to just learn about different best practices and innovation in the space. Again, as we talked about earlier, tons of different point solutions and alternative funding arrangements are out there. And this is just a fantastic way to learn about those particular items as well. So I'm going to tag in Colleen here really quickly just to talk a little bit about what we're hoping for you to get out of today as well. Colleen?
Yeah. So at the end of this webinar, we really hope that you'll feel a little bit more confident about the ability to run with a broker RFP process. And what we're going to do is to walk you through the playbook for running that RFP end to end over an 8-week period, and broke it down by the weekly priorities that we would aim to accomplish over each one of those 8 weeks. We're going to share some tips and tricks for making the process as painless as possible. And hopefully this will also allow you to get the most out of your evaluation, and then leave some time for live questions at the end. So as we're going through the content, please feel free to drop questions into the chat. We'll take a look at those when we reach the end and answer as many questions as we can. So we can go ahead and dive right into our step-by-step guide. So as I mentioned, the RFP process should take about 8 weeks end to end. This gives you enough time to thoroughly evaluate your options, but also keep the project pretty tightly scoped. It's easy for a project like this to kind of span on for many weeks, even months sometimes. But if you keep it to about 8 weeks, it'll allow you to kind of manage that process and make sure that you're making the most out of the investment that you're making. We're going to dig into the details of each one of these weeks, but at a high level, these are the weekly goals as we kind of look through the timeline here. Week 1 is going to be all about setting that strong foundation, getting your internal alignment ready before you move forward. Weeks 2 and 3 are going to be when you actually launch that RFP, you send it out to your participating brokers and field any questions they may have. Week 4 is when you review those responses and select your finalists. Week 5 is going to be a bit of scheduling, notifying those finalists and getting those meetings on the calendar. Week 6, you'll sit through those finalist presentations and score your different options. Week 7 would be conducting reference calls if you decide to do that, and aligning on your decision internally. And then wrapping up at the end of this process with selecting your broker and signing a broker of record letter if you do choose to move forward with a change. So kicking off week one, again, with the focus here on setting a strong foundation for your RFP evaluation, this is a big week to set your team up for success with this project. And as you're getting started, you want to answer a few key questions. The first two being, what's your reasoning for going out to RFP, making sure that there's a clear objective at the end of this. And what are you looking for in your benefits broker? And Ed, maybe you can share a few reasons that a team may actually decide to go out and do an RFP.
Absolutely. I think these are some great questions to ask yourself, ask internally, to at least figure out what stage in the process you are when it comes to reviewing your partnership. And one of the first kind of mind frames that we recommend putting yourself in is, what does the relationship look like today? And what does good look like for you tomorrow, right? So we kind of put ourselves into three different buckets. Is your relationship today actually working pretty well for you, but you just want to make sure that you don't have any blind spots, and you want to make sure that you have the right partner that can help, make sure that you're seeing the employee benefit trends that are kind of hitting the market, giving you good benchmarking, things like that. Maybe a market pulse check. That might be one particular way to approach this process. A second way is, you know what, my relationship right now is not going that great. Good doesn't look great right now, and I'd love to enhance that particular process moving forward, right? So you might have a much more in-depth RFP process to make sure that the potential broker partners that you're interviewing throughout the process are really going to give you exactly what you're looking for from a cultural perspective, from a benefit delivery perspective, and just overall consultation at the end of the day as well, right? Again, and then one of the things that we always recommend doing is creating broker pros and cons. These are just what you'll see here on the screen is just a few different things that you can think about supporting with your benefits administration. What does your team look like today, right? Are you a one-person operation? Do you have an extensive team? Are you very involved in the benefits? Are you a little bit more removed? How customizable are their benefits at the end of the day? Are they bringing you innovative solutions? And then the last one I think is actually really important, a mentor, right? Especially if you're someone that isn't super, knowledgeable when it comes to employee benefits, as it's this crazy space in and of itself. You want to make sure that you have a partner out there that is educating you along the way, even if you're not necessarily taking all of that particular advice, right? But at least someone that's willing to take the time to help you understand all the ins and outs that this employee benefit space can bring to you as well.
Yeah. Another important piece of setting that foundation is going to be ensuring your internal team is really aligned on the things that matter most to your company. When you're setting your priorities, you want to make sure that the leadership team is on board, and you're in agreement across the team on the most important attributes that you're going to be looking for when you're evaluating different brokers. It's also really important to determine who's going to actually be running point on this project. So it is fairly intensive. And while you'll likely have several internal stakeholders who are going to be participating, whether it's reviewing the RFP responses or sitting in on finalist presentations, there really should be one individual who has the bandwidth to really lead this project. So they're going to be doing things like handling broker outreach, answering questions that come in, scheduling and organizing finalist meetings. And if you identify that one person to really project manage the RFP, it's going to go probably a lot smoother for both your team internally as well as for the broker participants. So getting close to wrapping up the first week priorities here, Ed, just want to walk us through this last piece to consider.
Absolutely. So, excuse me. One of the things that we highly recommend doing is looking for the particular number of providers that you really want to reach out to. You don't want to overwhelm yourself, but also not keep it too narrow to the point where you're feeling like you're really not getting a good sense of what's out there from a market perspective. So based on feedback that we've seen, the number that we've seen that works from an interview perspective, or at least starting the process from an RFP perspective, is around 4 to 6 different providers before you narrow it down to the particular finalist stage. But how do you even get to that? How do you even find those particular 4 to 6 brokers at the end of the day? Colleen, do you know some ways that people can, or do you have some suggestions on how people can find those potential partners?
Sure, yeah. So referrals are typically a good place to start when you think about trusted resources that you may have within your personal network that could be friends, that could be people you know from other HR communities. If you're part of any local or industry associations, you can ask for their thoughts on who has been a good broker partner. And you can also take to Google, like the same way that we would look up information on pretty much anything else in this day and age, you can look for broker information that way as well. Taking a look at websites such as G2 can provide you some insight into feedback that brokers are getting from current or previous clients. And you can also take a look at like the broker's own websites as well. That's a good way to get at least a high level idea of how a broker presents themselves and what they're actually advertising as their priorities in areas of expertise. So at this point, you've set your foundation for the project. You've selected the brokers you're going to be reaching out to. You've got clear understanding of what your company is looking for in a broker partner. And so now we're moving into weeks 2 and 3 of this project. And this is going to be where you're actually launching the RFP to the selected brokers. We recommend that it's best practice to provide a question and answer period where brokers have the opportunity to review the initial information that you sent and then come back to you with questions to help them really customize their responses. It's up to you how much data you choose to provide, either in the initial RFP or in terms of the questions that brokers are asking you for. And this is really going to be based on your comfort level and how much customization that you are looking to see in your responses. So, for example, if you are a large group employer and you have access to medical claims experience data, and you want to see that woven in as part of the responses that you're getting and recommendations that you've asked for, obviously you're going to have to provide that data. But that's really an internal decision if that's something that you want to share at this stage in the process. Some employers do choose to hold off and share that when you're closer to finalist presentations, so you're sharing that with a more narrow group of brokers. Another tip to consider is compiling all of the questions that were submitted across brokers and sharing those questions and answers back with the entire field. The pro, so to speak, if you choose to do this, is that you're leveling the playing field so that everyone responding has access to all the same information and details. But the con is that if you choose to respond only directly to the brokers who actually asked for information, that can help you sort of weed things out and evaluate who is the most involved and thoughtful in their reading of the RFP and coming back to you with questions. And Ed, I know you have some thoughts or opinions on broker engagement at this stage, so we'd love to maybe hear you elaborate on this.
Absolutely. Just a brief note to make, just to underscore broker engagement. As Colleen mentioned, the Q&A process we think is pivotal in at least getting the most bang for your buck out of the entire RFP process. But it can feel transactional in the sense that you're just answering questions and waiting for brokers to send you a bunch of questions. However, we would actually take a little bit more of an artistic view to this where, or maybe even add it to your scorecard. How engaged is that broker through that process? Just like many of us, we only have one chance at a first impression. And for you as the employer who are looking for a new partner for the next several years from a long-term perspective, how engaged is that broker? Does that give you any or shed any particular light during those first initial weeks about how that relationship's going to feel and look after you've made that selection? Has that broker asked any questions at all, or did they just answer the RFP? Or were they very engaged, trying to get to understand your culture and sending you little tidbits from your website even, or things of that nature? Is that important to you as well? These are just questions to ask internally, but we believe should be also added as part of the entire scorecard process to see, is that broker engagement during the Q&A process important to you? And if it is, then definitely making it feel a lot less transactional during that time. That way you embrace it a little bit more. So then, now we've gotten our short list of providers and vendor partners, and now we have a ton of different RFPs to review, right? So here's the fun part. When you're going through some of these questions and filtering responses, we would suggest that there's a few key areas you really want to make sure to focus on, depending on the goals of your organization. One is just to be measured and selective. For example, are you culturally aligned? When you've met with your team internally and you've talked about the different goals you have from an education perspective, people perspective, representation perspective, what have you, depending on what those goals are, Does that potential partner exude some of the attributes that you're hoping to have? Because of course, any vendor partner you bring on board is also kind of a reflection of the organization as well, right? So just to kind of take those particular things to light. Do they provide the scope of services that you're looking for, right? Are you looking for, more on the member experience aspect? Are you looking for a lot of alternative funding expertise? You definitely want to focus and score those particular points a bit heavier than others as well. Are they showing that they're knowledgeable, but also willing to educate, right? Earlier, we made the point about being somewhat of a mentor to a degree. Whether you're a knowledgeable individual or someone who's been, entering the HR space for the first time and understanding benefits for the first time, having a partner that is always going to keep you abreast of compliance situations, emerging benefit trends, and just different ways to kind of challenge you to think about the different levers of how you can build a comprehensive benefit plan. Again, that should be part of the philosophy and something that should be weighted a certain amount as well. After you've gone through all these questions and answers and basically come up with a list of who you believe is the right fit, definitely recommend limiting it down to about 3 or so. So we talked about starting with somewhere between 4 to 6, but now we're going to move a little bit more towards the interview stage where you're going to have presentations, and we recommend around the 3 mark to give you a really good offering of who's going to be a great partner for you moving forward. During that process, highly recommend having leadership buy-in for your decision, right? What we've seen sometimes in the past is that the finance team feels different than the HR team, which feels different than the operations team. And if you can get all aligned internally, as Colleen mentioned earlier, it's just going to be a much smoother, easier process, and maybe even much quicker for you along the way. So Colleen, I'd love to get your opinion on the finalist presentations and maybe any time-saving hacks that you may have.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving into this period where you're notifying finalists and getting those presentations scheduled, you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of these meetings. And so something that can help you do that is to make sure that you're being very specific in setting the expectations of what you're hoping to see from the brokers during these meetings. And what you're hoping to see should tie pretty directly back to the goals of your project. And just for example, if benefits innovation was a key driver of the reasons why you're actually going out and exploring a change, be clear that part of the presentation should be providing thoughts on what solutions could be a good fit for your company and why. You also want to be clear on who should be in attendance. And so are you okay with just meeting the broker's leadership team, or is it important to you to meet your day-to-day service team? We would encourage, if at all possible, to ask for the opportunity to meet your dedicated team, since that really is who you'll interface the most with. And it's important that you feel good about that relationship and the ability to work with that person day in and day out. And then you want to decide if your organization would prefer a virtual or an in-person meeting. In today's day and age, post-COVID, there's a lot of things that happen virtually. And if you're a virtual organization who, pretty much works remotely, maybe virtual finalist presentations will work great for you. But if you are someone who really values having on-site support from your broker and someone who you're expecting to come, and see you for strategy and renewal meetings and open enrollment, then maybe taking the opportunity to have an in-person finalist meeting and make sure that they're willing to make that travel investment could be a good way to vet that aspect of the relationship. Typically about 60 to 90 minutes is going to be the sweet spot. This will provide enough time to really get a sense for that broker's capabilities and what they're bringing to the table, but it will keep the focus pretty narrow and also keep your team's attention. And then lastly, we recommend scheduling these presentations within about a 5 to 10 day period, so that you can do these comparisons and scoring while the presentations and information is pretty fresh in your mind. If you draw these finalist presentations out over a period of a few weeks, it can get much harder to really truly compare and contrast the people who went first versus maybe the meetings that you had towards the end of that period. So this next week here is going to bring you to that big milestone, of actually completing those finalist presentations. And before you go ahead and kick these off, make sure that you're in agreement on the scorecard you're going to be using to compare presentations and compare brokers. What we're showing here is an example scorecard, and we'll actually share that with you as a takeaway, so you'll be able to reference that in the future. But we do recommend that you take a look and really make this your own based on your unique goals. Your scorecard is going to tie directly back to your pain points and your RFP goals, but some criteria that might make its way into the scorecard would be things like organizational fit. Is this a team that I really feel like I can work with day in and day out? Broker innovation, are they going to secure the best benefits for your company? And goal alignment, are they going to support your financial and cultural goals? So just some of the things to think about when you're evaluating who is going to be that long-term partner. So after completing presentations and going through these scorecards, the next step would be the reference process. So Ed, can you walk us through some considerations if you're choosing to move forward with reference calls?
Absolutely. So when it comes to reference calls, just like when you are interviewing any type of vendor partner, whether it's obviously a benefit broker, 401k partner, retirement plan partner, leave management solution, maybe even an HRIS solution. Typically, when you're asking for references, the vendor partner you're requesting them from are going to put up forth, somewhere between 2 to 4 of who they believe are their favorites, right? Who they believe are showcasing all the best attributes, or maybe have the best relationships with as well. So if we park that to the side for a second, what we found is that the reference call portion of the RFP process has felt a bit more like a check of the box experience, where you're just hoping to hear, you're actually walking into a lot of those conversations knowing exactly what people are going to say. We think that this might be a great way to challenge the conversation a bit differently, and maybe asking or being a little bit more real to a degree and asking some hard questions, right? So, for example, has your broker, maybe made a mistake and owned the mistake, right? Are they taking ownership of a particular situation that's happening? When there's a problem, whether they're involved or not, are they bringing new solutions to that problem? Are they showing you ways out of a problem, or maybe actually preventing a problem from happening in the first place, right? The best surprise is no surprise, right? Ultimately. So it's just an opportunity to take a second look as to how you're asking questions of those particular reference calls. And then again, asking those hard questions, because again, no one's perfect and there's going to be issues that come up in the future. You want to make sure that you have a partner that's sitting on the same side of the table with you that can help triage that and give you the peace of mind at the end of the day that you just have the right partner moving forward as well. All right, and then we've made it. You've gone through quite the process, but Colleen, I'd love your opinion on what happens next.
Yes, as Taylor says, let's go. So you've made it to the selection stage, and really the last step is to notify that selected broker and sign a broker of record or BOR letter, assuming that you have chosen to change brokers. And if that's the case, changing is generally as easy as signing a new BOR letter. But you do want to carefully review the service contracts with your new and your current broker, just to ensure that there's no unexpected term. So, your current broker, just being aware of any notification periods, and with your new broker, if there is a service agreement, ensuring that the things that you are excited about in that evaluation process are clearly included, and you're comfortable with what that relationship is going to look like moving forward. If you've included your current broker in the process, and you have chosen to stay with them, so let's say you completed the RFP process, but you decided or substantiated the fact that your current relationship is actually the best broker for your organization, that's great, but you want to make sure that you do work together on an action plan to make sure they deliver on those promises. I think pretty much everyone is going to put their best foot forward in an RFP situation. So you want to make sure that you have a documented plan for how you're actually going to hold them accountable and move forward together. And then lastly, you want to make sure that you also notify the participating brokers who were not selected. Often this can be a good learning experience for those brokers. So if they do request that you share some feedback as to why they weren't selected or what led you to the broker that you did select, it's great if you're open to sharing that feedback, because that can definitely be helpful. All right, so we have gone through each of the 8 weeks outlined within the broker RFP process, all the way from setting your foundation to selecting that broker partner that you're going to be with moving forward. So hopefully this has given you a bit more confidence in being able to run that process end to end. But a question that you may still have after hearing this information is, okay, I understand what this process looks like, but when is it actually the best time for me to run a broker RFP? That answer is going to be based on your internal goals and in some cases your renewal timing as well. So maybe if the reason that you're deciding to go out and evaluate other options is because you had a terrible renewal and open enrollment experience and you're just coming off of that, you can really choose to run this process at the start of your plan year. So you can evaluate your options and get right to work on, building a new relationship and getting more support for your company. But otherwise, if there might be, other factors influencing the reasons that you're going out to market, you do want to set yourself up for success by aligning the RFP process to allow you with enough time to go through the pre-renewal strategy and education process leading up to renewal and open enrollment with that new broker. So if your benefits renew January 1st and you want to kick off renewal planning with a new partner about 6 months in advance of the renewal, we would recommend that your RFP process, might run in the 8 weeks starting in early May and notifying that new broker by the end of June. So just one timeline to consider if you are looking to start a new relationship and go through the planning process in advance of that renewal. So we're going to switch gears a bit and touch on a few tips and tricks to help you get the most out of your RFP. And we'll start with, some of the positives, things to look for when you're going through the evaluation. We won't go through every single one of these, but there are a couple of items that stand out to me. So I'll hit on a couple first. And I think one here that resonates is a plan to really get to know the details of your employee base and goals. So it's really important for a broker not to just come in with a cookie cutter approach or kind of one size fits all answers, but actually tailor their responses and recommendations to your company. There's no vendor solution or funding arrangement or even employee communications approach that's going to be truly one size fits all. So you want to understand how they're going to get to know your culture and align that strategy to the things that are important to you. I also love this call out to look for unique and specific answers about how this brokerage will make your work easier and improve the employee experience. We talk a lot about innovation and cost and strategy, and all that is very important and can be big focus points of an RFP evaluation. But how a broker is actually going to level up, your day-to-day as part of the HR team, as well as your employees' experience around their benefits, can have a really meaningful impact. So those are a couple of the ancillary things that I would encourage you to really think through, how that respondent is going to level up your day-to-day. Ed, what stands out to you here?
Absolutely. There's a couple that jump out to me really quickly. The first one is openness to, and then also not having transparency, making sure that your benefit partner is at least open to explaining, sharing, educating, walking you through the continuum of different ways that you can fund your benefits, your medical, your dental, your vision plans, so on and so forth. And yes, it could be more work, but at the same time, it might align with the goals you have from an employee experience perspective, quality of care perspective, so on and so forth. So again, not necessarily shying away from those things, but at least educating you and showing you those particular options, especially if that's of interest to you throughout the year. And just really quickly, secondly, it's just the consistency with who you'll be working with. Colleen mentioned earlier about the finalist stage and hoping to have the team that you're going to be working with on a day-to-day basis as part of that presentation or at least part of that meeting so that you can put a face to a name overall. And so maybe getting a good understanding of their tenure, their future goals, and how responsive they are, so on and so forth. Because again, they're a reflection of your benefits, and also they're supposed to be your right-hand person whenever times get tough or times are good, and you just need someone to celebrate with you as well, right? So again, just the consistency in that team we find to be pretty important. Colleen, do you want to hit on a couple places we should avoid?
Yeah. As far as things to avoid, or that would be, potential red flags, One that stands out to me here would be a response that does not show proactive timelines to keep all parties up to speed. And I really think there's kind of two pieces to this tip here that would concern me if I was evaluating a broker. Number one would be I'd be looking for someone who's going to illustrate concrete, proactive timelines. That broker should be instilling trust that they're going to drive a proactive annual service plan, and you know that they're going to continue to, push forward and help stay aligned from a timing perspective. And the second part of that is, having a plan to keep all parties up to speed. Communication is so important between an HR team and your broker, but especially in the beginning of a new relationship when you're getting to know each other, they're still sort of learning the way that you work and your culture. Having a way to proactively communicate and keep those open lines of communication is going to go a really long way and helping you get up to speed quicker and just building that relationship and helping everyone to feel a bit more comfortable. How about you, Ed? What stands out to you here?
I got one that jumps out to me. As a benefit advisor ourselves and benefit broker, we believe in a mindset of abundance, and the one on the top right, don't take the employee experience into consideration, is pretty key. When you think about why employee benefits exist in the first place, as a recruitment, as a retention tool, as a way to continue to brand your organization from within. Your number one asset, we would argue, is your employees. What are we without our team members that work hard for our mission at the end of the day? And if we are not taking the employee experience into consideration when you are crafting, building, educating on a benefit campaign, then I think we might be missing the mark as well, right? So it's not all numbers and graphs. At the end of the day, there's people with families and some have kids. And there's lives at the end of the day that we're touching as well. So taking that employee experience into consideration, we feel to be an extremely important aspect to consider.
I agree with that.
All right. So just moving on to what are some top questions to ask, right? So again, most RFPs will have a multitude of different questions. And again, we're not going to go through all of these, but there's a couple here that we thought might be worth considering. Colleen, is there any on this page that you would suggest that we should definitely include during an RFP process?
Yeah. I love question number 9. Describe how you propose to build an understanding of our culture and priorities. I had touched a little bit on this, previously when I talked about one of the things to look for in an RFP, but I think it just underscores, why this is so important. Your broker really should make an effort to understand your unique goals as a company and a team and what your employees are looking for and use those to inform their strategy and recommendations. And so to understand, exactly how they're going to get to know your culture, whether that's spending time with different team members internally, allowing them to do, Q&A periods with members or different department heads. All those are examples of ways that they could get to know your culture a little bit better, and just hearing from them how they plan to do that so that they can really, again, tailor that strategy and long-term recommendations to your specific employee base and cultural needs. I think it's just something really important.
And thinking about the mindset of abundance kind of attitude, I think about question number 4 specifically about how your team measures itself. Is that provider willing to hear your feedback and make adjustments to your feedback in order to have the best and most fruitful and most efficient partnership moving forward? Are they sharing how they rate each other internally as well, whether it's peer reviewing or things of that nature? And again, no one's perfect at the end of the day. No organization is perfect as well. But the way we respond to these things can be. And so, again, are they measuring themselves, and are they also giving you the platform to measure them too? I think is really key to finding a partner, or at least someone that's a partner and not just a broker ultimately. So, hope that makes sense.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Again, just really appreciate your time today. Hopefully, we left you with some good little nuggets on how to or what to consider when you're looking at a potential new benefit partner. Again, it's your second biggest line item expense for most employers. So we understand that this is a big decision to make year over year as well. But Colleen and I are here for you if you have any questions. Again, we're also a benefit advisor ourselves, and happy to just walk you through any of the things that we talked about today, whether now or in the future as well.